fill it with South Aucklanders?
Through the Chair, no, not always. Out of 85 premises-based hearings, 70 times we've had one or more members from that south. So, for example, south, north, west or central is the area-based approach that we take. So 70 out of 85 of those hearings, there was at least one member in that hearing from the local area.
And I suppose those 15 were the off licences, were they?
I don't have the exact information. There's a variety, and there are a number of reasons, either through availability or, for example, applications where one chair is seeing a consistent stream of applications come through, they're allocated. I'm not too sure about the off licences.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, Wayne Walker.
Sure, just have a question about the options. One of the issues that the local boards have mentioned is consistency, and they suggested an independent commissioner sitting across. Would it be possible to have a hybrid, so something that would be more local along the lines of option 3, but also have somebody that was sitting across, or might need more than one, I don't know how that would work given the workload, so that there was a mix of consistency and local?
Through the Chair, that's something that we try to do as much as we can at the moment.
In practice.
In practice.
I understand that, but having said that, option 3 doesn't allow it to that degree, does it?
Option 3 wouldn't. No, that's correct.
So what I'm asking is it possible to have a hybrid, and how might that be constituted?
Through the Chair, I haven't really had an opportunity to consider that, but possibly yes.
Do you think it's a good idea?
I think I would need more time to consider that, I'm sorry.
Work on option 4, Wayne.
Well,
And just a question perhaps for yourself, Mr. Chair.
Forget the third way. This is
What's
the fourth way.
what's the imperative on this item if we've got issues that are being raised that need some further consideration?
well, the imperative is that we indicated when we made the decision that we would centralise the district licensing committees, that we would have a review in 12 months.
Some of us wouldn't have to.
And this is the review. And, you know, one of the issues is, do we have centralised district licensing committees, or do we have them devolved out into the different areas? So we're really making the decision here today. Once the decision's made, that's final. It'll be what happens in October 2016. The new arrangements will come into play, and that'll be it.
So let me re-express my concern. If something's on the table and I'm suggesting that there's a hybrid option and that requires consideration, and there may be some other considerations that some other councillors have got, can we defer this item to a following meeting and have better resolution then?
Councillor, your only option really now is to either vote for the resolution that Councillor Philippine has put on the table, or vote against it, because that's where we are at the moment. So, have you any other questions or any other?
It's gone on and on and on.
Councillor Casey.
Yeah, I fully support my colleague, Councillor Alf Filipaina, for the amendment. The next item is about empowered communities. It's all about bottom-up development. It's all about giving the communities a voice. And I hope that everybody will be supporting that. Well, I'm really glad that we had the review, because what we've heard is the model we chose isn't working. And it's not just today we've heard that. We've all heard it. We've heard it from Angela Dalton. We've heard it from Lydia Saucini. We've heard it from Efesto Collins. In local media, in national media, in social media. They've said time after time after time that the community's voice is not being heard. Let's step back to the Auckland Plan. The Auckland Plan suggested that the Southern Initiative was an important area for us. This is actually about the South. This is about the Southern boards. I hope you've all read through the comments of the Southern boards that are in our agenda here, because they make me fearful. And I was especially fearful when I heard some of the comments today that there is a feeling that the DLCs are the cheerleader for the alcohol industry. Well, how on earth did that get so out of whack? It means that we didn't do it right, and thankfully we've got a chance to do it differently. Now, this might not be the better way either, but it certainly cannot stay the way it is when we have comments like, all through the report, concern that community views are being ignored and given less weight than applicants. And that's not just once, it's twice, 3 and 4 times. How to change it? Change the model. Give local communities a voice. In our Auckland Plan, we want to reduce the harm from alcohol. One way that we say we're going to do that is to stop the proliferation of off-licences, liquor stores in poor areas. There's nothing wrong with saying that out loud. That's not a bias, that's in our Auckland Plan. So give the boards more say, give local people more say, and support Councillor Alf Filipaina's amendment.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take my turn now. I'm going to say for starters, Councillor Casey, that I don't believe that the boards will get any more say than they have at the moment, because it's not the boards who make the decisions. It's the district licensing committees, which are completely independent of the local boards. And, you know, that shouldn't change with devolving the local committees down to the local areas. But what my concern is really, we're going to end up in a situation with when the local alcohol policy is in place. We've got a large number of areas which will have freezers that will prevent licences being granted in those areas for 2 years. So it's going to take probably until mid next year for the local alcohol policy to be signed off, and we'll have a situation where I think we'll have more work in some areas than other areas of Auckland, and when that occurs, we won't have the ability to move people around because they'll be domiciled in the particular area where they're selected from. And, you know, the other thing is, board members can apply, and there are board members who are commissioners and chairs on the district licensing committees. But they have to match up and come up to the criteria that the Act states is required if you want to be a commissioner. And that isn't that you can just walk off the street and become a commissioner. You have to have the experience that is required in the Act. So I'm fearful that we will have a situation where in some areas there'll be a lot of work, in other areas there'll be lower levels of requirements because of what the impact of the the local alcohol policy is. And I just wonder whether councillors who are going to say they're supporting this have really thought it through, really thought the process through, because we want district licensing committees that have good expertise, that have work, and that there's a cross-pollination of the requirements and the experience gained because they do hearings in different areas, and they do hearings where they're where they're members of the committees and do move from one area to another, which is what Councillor Walker was alluding to. And I think that is important, building up a base of competency, which I don't believe we'll have if we go to this new idea that Councillor Filipaina is bringing forward. So I ask councillors, do think about that, do consider the ramifications of this, and, you know, as we've heard, the bulk of the hearings are in the central area. And that's where the bulk of the applications come from. Bulk of the liquor outlets, both on licences and off licences, are in the central area. So you'll have a situation where the central area will become the prima donnas, I believe, at the expense of the other areas across Auckland. But it's up to council, and you will make the decision based on people's experiences. Thank you. Councillor Brewer.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Look, I, back in 2013, supported the more localised model, but I won't be supporting my council colleagues' option here, option 3. And I just want to reflect on a couple of things, and for me it's around process and giving the staff the opportunity to work through the work program. You know, when the Labour Party's review came out yesterday, there was no sudden announcement of structural or leadership change. They are working now through a work program to increase their competitiveness. And so I believe the same kind of philosophy and principle applies here, that we've now ticked off, we've now consumed a review, and we've had some very insightful comments from local board members. But it's now over to staff to commence their work program. They've given us some scoping direction there as to what they will focus on, and for them to report back in August with how they are going to improve all the issues that have been raised today within the very tight constraints of the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act legislative requirements. And so, look, maybe if come August, Mr Chair, the staff come back, the local boards come back, and none of us are satisfied that any tangible improvements are going to be made, and a lot more can be done, then possibly that is the time to look at option 3. But in the meantime, we've consumed the review, we've heard it, and we're now just commencing a work program that will be reported back on August. And so I'd actually like to see that process run its course over the next 2 or 3 months. Staff have a good idea as to, and have reported extensively as to the issues. They know the issues, and they know where in a very tight funnel they can actually make tangible changes. And so I commit to that process, and I'd actually like to see in the recommendation, Mr Chair, that it is option 2, as retaining the existing structure but reducing the number of commissioners, to make that clear that is what we as a committee, for the minutes and for the public to, if they ever read through this, to understand, and for us to possibly see all the, to make decisions, potential structural decisions, if enough are not satisfied with the outcome of the work program that is going to be presented to us in August. I think, again, it would be jumping the gun to try and change the structure off the base of a review without the work program. Again, I liken it to the Labour caucus yesterday, changing the leadership and changing the structure off their review. No, they're going through a process, they're going through a work program themselves, so let's follow a similar process.
Okay, thank you. Option 2. Councillor Crum.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and apologies for my late arrival, so if what I raise has been traversed already, feel free to let me know. But just, it's very similar in backing up what Councillor Brewer has just said in terms of another point in the future for which we could review the option of option 3, but for me it's not now. And I'll refer to the Maungakeke Tamaki Local Board's written response, which is in attachment C, where they make a number of very practical and sensible points. One is acknowledging their low number of hearings in the area, noting also that they would prefer a local DLC model. Most local boards would, but given the current low level of hearings in their area, is wondering whether there'd be justification for this 21 local DLCs at all. So contrary to what might be assumed, I think there's a practical perspective that they're raising here, is the workload there. And they refer to, and this is my question, what happens at the end of the 2-year freeze. So I'm not sure whether that's already been discussed here at committee, but My question would be, what's likely to happen at the end of the 2-year freeze? Because I think the report's suggesting that, well, the local board's suggesting that there might be an increase of hearings, and I think the report's suggesting there might be a decrease in hearings. So your perspective and the idea that option 3 could be reviewed at the end of the 2-year freeze to see what the landscape looks like then, or the August suggestion that Councillor Brewer has tabled. Thoughts, please.
Through the chair, the 2-year freeze, we felt that within that time period there would be a reduction in the number of hearings, and so therefore a lower workload. All of the local board objections so far have related to off licences, and that's where the 2-year freeze would actually have the impact. After that 2-year period, there's a rebuttable presumption against off licences in those particular areas, and again that means that we would be seeing changes in the volume of objections and hearings associated with that. So I would agree with your comments around if a change to the structure occurred now, that would definitely have an impact on the workload given the year of history that we've seen so far in terms of the low volume of hearings. So there would be members and chairs that wouldn't have very much, if at all, any work to do until October 2016. And as another councillor has alluded to earlier, when the local alcohol policy comes into effect, that again will change the workload. So within sort of between now and October 2016, I think that a change in structure would certainly impact our existing chairs and members quite significantly in terms of the geographical spread.
So the idea that, and Councillor Brewer has referred to August, that we could look at the local DLC model option 3 at some point in the future, just not now? Mechanically, how could that work and when would it work?
Through the chair, the structure could be looked at any time in the future. As mentioned, the contracts for our existing members expire in October next year, and that would be a natural point that I would suggest would be the best to review the structure again.